today on the Frontline Health podcast.
Medication is great, but when we become so dependent on medications and it becomes our crutch as opposed to our last resort, I think that's where the issue comes in. So I like this step. It is hard for me, and I would say it would have been really hard 10, 15 years ago to look at it and say doctors won't just prescribe drugs, but they'll prescribe diets as well. I hope we get to that level. It's hard for me to think that way, but I think we've got to change our whole mindset within the medical community and get more prevention oriented. Kind of what he even mentioned, that they would master the language of prevention before they even touch a stethoscope is a big statement. I don't know how that happens, but the fact that we're talking about it, I think, is certainly a positive step.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Frontline Health podcast by Centurion, where we share health news, tips, and insights to help you take ownership of your health. I'm Evan Patrick. Troy Dool, our founder and CEO here at Centurion Health, is with us, and we're excited to come and bring you guys a fresh round of health headline highlights. Troy, how are you?
Good. How are you, man?
Doing good. Enjoyed a little bit cooler weather at the time of us recording this. It's got me feeling ready for football season.
It is definitely that time of year, and to start off with our health headline highlights, I figured this would hit home because it starts in Texas, where it says Texas just signed a law that could put warning labels on Doritos, M&Ms, and Mountain Dew. Figured this one would hit home for you. So Texas signed a law. Governor Abbott approved that bill requiring warning labels on foods and drinks containing 44 specific additives, including dyes, sweeteners, oils, preservatives, and bleached flour. They're all legal in the US, but they're banned abroad. And really, they're kind of wondering what that's going to do to the industry as a whole. Because if you have to do it in one state, more than likely, you're going to have to do it on all the states because they're not going to want to change their labels and they're going to want to have it standardized. So there's some hope that this is going to begin to change some of the food regulations and hopefully get us a little bit healthier food. And they said these are all going to start hitting the shelves in 2027. So what are your thoughts on that? I know I had seen some headlines that said Mountain Dew had been outlawed or banned in Texas, which is not the case. And I think there are some memes going around talking about that, but that hasn't happened yet. But this is a big step in the right direction.
I really don't see how anybody could see this as anything but positive, left, right, or center. I mean, this is just holding businesses accountable for making sure that what they're putting in our food products that they're marketing as safe is actually that. And so I think that's actually, a positive role for the government to be involved in. And it's good to see Governor Abbott in Texas kind of taking ownership of that and making sure that the products that are on our shelves don't have things that we are actively aware are harmful for people. So really, this is exciting. I hope it's something that people can unite over and be excited about. People are always going to have negative things to say in today's society, but it's really good to see just how in so many different spaces, health is on people's minds and what they're putting in their bodies is on their minds. So I think this is a great thing to see.
Yeah, and I like the idea of having a warning label as opposed to just taking something off the shelf because it still allows us to take ownership of our health. It allows us to make that decision of what's right or what's wrong with our diet. And by putting a warning label, I wouldn't think anybody should be upset about that. Now, it is going to increase cost for some of those companies, which certainly is an issue, and you have to think about that. But at the same time, it's one change. It's enacted over time, so it shouldn't be a long-term cost issue. So I'm excited about it. Hopefully, it will make a difference.
Another interesting point that I have heard people sort of bringing up when it comes to this kind of thing is a lot of these companies have changed the ingredients that they use in these products throughout the years. So like the the Oreos or the M&Ms or the Doritos, and I don't know specifically for these, but just for example, the products that our parents or grandparents consumed with these same brands are not necessarily the same things that we're
So true.
consuming today. And so I do think it's important for us to be aware of that. Again, as you were saying, like adding a warning label kind of uh, is a great middle ground. I think between the changes that a business has to make and the informed decisions that a consumer makes, to where it really should be looked at as a great compromise and a win for everyone.
But I'm hopeful that these warning labels will help us really all to wake up. And if we get to the point where we go, okay, it has that in there, I don't want it anymore, then the next best step for these companies is to go, okay, the consumer no longer wants this, so we're going to change back to the original ingredients that we had, or to ingredients that are just as good from the standpoint of presentation or taste, but maybe it costs a little bit more. I think consumers would be willing to pay a little bit more if it has less effect on their health over time. Um, but hopefully it's not too terribly expensive.
Totally agree. Our next headline, RFK Jr. calls on medical schools to ramp up nutrition education. Medical schools talk about nutrition, but they fail to teach it, the health secretary said. A couple of other quotes. In the future, doctors won't just prescribe drugs, they'll be able to prescribe diets as well. Every physician should master the language of prevention before they even touch a stethoscope. Nearly all medical residents are asked to counsel patients about nutrition, but fewer than a quarter of practicing physicians feel adequately prepared to provide nutrition advice. He says we'll start by embedding nutrition directly into college pre-med programs and testing it on the MCAT, which is of course the medical school entrance exam that anyone has to take before they're accepted into medical school. Troy, you've been in this industry for a long time, working with healthcare providers, working with physicians, educating them about different drugs and products that are on the market. I mean, what are some insights that you have into this where you have really become aware that maybe our medical providers, they're just not educated on nutrition, and it's kind of hard to fault them for that, but where have you seen that become an issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a culture, we've fallen into the trap of what's easy. And I think the medical community is not immune to that exact philosophy, or the culture as a whole. Because I still remember walking into a doctor who was eating a donut and smoking a cigarette, and he was raving about the fact that he had a new cholesterol medication that was going to take care of all those things, so he didn't have to worry about it. And I think that is indicative of a lot of the people who are physicians now or within the medical community that just don't think about the total body and the diet in particular, and how you can step into that and make those changes without medication. Medication is great, but when we become so dependent on medications and it becomes our crutch as opposed to our last resort, I think that's where the issue comes in. So I like this step. It is hard for me, and I would say it would have been really hard 10, 15 years ago to look at it and say doctors won't just prescribe drugs, but they'll prescribe diets as well. I hope we get to that level. It's hard for me to think that way, but I think we've got to change our whole mindset within the medical community and get more prevention oriented. Kind of what he even mentioned, that they would master the language of prevention before they even touch a stethoscope, is a big statement. Um, I don't know how that happens, but the fact that we're talking about it, I think, is certainly a positive step.
You know, there are a couple of things that come to my mind that we have really been beating the drum for as a company when it comes to the focus of nutrition. For example, folic acid.
Mm.
We have created prenatal vitamins that have the natural form, which is folate, a form that is better metabolized by most people out there. And we've had to do a lot of work to really educate physicians and healthcare providers that we work with, because what they were taught in medical school was that folic acid is what is what a pregnant woman specifically needs when she's pregnant
Mhm.
to have healthy development for that baby. And we now know that that has had harmful effects on some. Similar, during the COVID pandemic, quercetin, right? We were really beating the drum for that as an ingredient that would help boost immune systems and get the vitamins where they need to go. So you know, this continues to be a thing that that we really need more education for our healthcare providers so that they can provide the best care possible to their patients.
For sure. And it always surprises me when you go into a position and you really expect them to understand everything about your health, but they're really not trained in the health side. They're trained more in treating symptoms and things along those lines, which it's not their fault. It's just the way that our system is. So maybe this is one step to help them get along or get further along in their education and really help people look at their health as a whole, because you're right. It's really very amazing when you think that a doctor doesn't know that, and not just doctors, but most of us, we're not told that folic acid is synthetic and that methylfolate is something that is a natural form that's found in nature. And until we get better educated as both the medical community, but also our culture, I don't think those things will change. So maybe this is one of those steps in the right direction. Our next headline: acetaminophen use during pregnancy may increase children's autism and ADHD risk, a study finds. It says that acetaminophen, commonly sold under the brand name Tylenol and many others, has been considered the safest painkiller for women who are pregnant. And it was a Harvard-led analysis of 46 studies. They had about 100,000 participants, and it suggested that prenatal acetaminophen exposure, or Tylenol, may increase the risk of kids developing autism spectrum disorder or ADHD. But there are also some studies that have not shown a link to that. So we want to make sure that we highlight that. And then it also said that researchers caution that given acetaminophen's widespread use in pregnancy, even a small increase in risk could have significant health impacts. They stressed that pregnant women should consult doctors before stopping medication, since untreated pain or fever also poses risks. And while we have found these strong associations, this article talked about that there were others. There was a Journal of American Medical Association study in 2024 that was funded by the NIH that found no link. But I think what this should do for us all is really have us to pause and think, are we actually going toward these medications out of habit, or do we really need them? And hopefully we're beginning to look not just at the big picture items or the bigger items that we talk about, but we don't really even think about Tylenol or Advil or any of those others as being a health issue because they've been around so long and we've taken them forever. And I think a lot of times we take it for granted. So this is a study that actually opens up our minds to go, hey, Tylenol seems to be pretty um, pretty harmless as a whole, and that's what we've always heard. But now there are studies linking Tylenol and acetaminophen to ADHD and to autism, which is kind of eye-opening and should hopefully get us to start thinking more about our health in general. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just wonder, I mean, are there any natural remedies that kind of come to your mind for reducing pain? I know certainly there are plenty of natural solutions for reducing inflammation that we have talked about and that we have. So I'm just curious, like, if acetaminophen is not the answer, what could some potential alternatives be that might be a little bit safer?
Well, I think part of it is we reach for that as soon as we have just a little headache or just we're not feeling quite right, and maybe we don't reach for that quite as soon, and we push through it. Maybe we go get the rest that we need. Maybe it's a sign that we're dehydrated and we have to drink more, and we start looking at the other pieces that are involved as opposed to just reaching for the Tylenol or the Advil. And then there certainly are some things out there. I know aspirin and derivatives of aspirin are natural,
Mhm.
and you could go after those pieces. But even then, I think if you're reaching for it in those moments of pain and you're not really addressing what may be causing the pain to begin with, I think that's where we've got to get to with our mindset as individuals and as a culture as a whole.
Yeah, totally agree. I had this conversation with my wife the other night. I knew I was having a headache, which doesn't happen for me regularly, but I was having a headache. I was dehydrated. I knew I was dehydrated. It was 90 degrees outside that day, and all I had had was really just one glass of water that entire day. And I mean, besides that, just like coffee. And so I knew that was the issue, and we are getting ready to go to bed. And so I started drinking some water, and she asked if I wanted some Tylenol, and I'm like, no, because like the problem is that I'm dehydrated. It's not that I need
That's right.
kind of medication. And yes, I'm not saying that it's wrong for somebody to do this, but I mean, especially when you can pretty clearly identify what the cause of something is, I think it's a good idea to just go with what your body actually needs and not mask that.
Yeah, and there's that balance, right? We don't want to go full bore and say never take medication at all because I think medications are certainly a tool that we can use and help build us. And there are times that I've had headaches that I'm like, I can't even sleep at this point. Now, I know that I probably needed more water, I needed some other things, but I would wait and I would try to go to sleep. I would drink water, and then still 2 hours later, I'd wake up with a headache, which at that time I'm like, okay, I'm going to take something because I just can't sleep.
Mhm.
And so there are times to take it, but instead of it being our first instinct, what can we do to try to remedy that before we get to taking a Tylenol or an Advil?
Mhm. Our final health headline for today. This is one that I am so happy to see. 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day linked to longer life, lower diabetes risk. Troy, the reason that I really love this is because I get pushback from some of my friends who drink energy drinks, and they say, well, you drinking that coffee is the same thing as me drinking an energy drink. And I'm here to tell you, no, it is not. These are very different things. A recent review gives an overview of coffee's health benefits considering the most recent data. For most moderate coffee intake offers health benefits, including decreased mortality and decreased risk for some diseases like cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. There are still factors to consider, such as caffeine intake during pregnancy, of course, decaffeinated drinks, and more research is needed to kind of verify these claims. But Troy, we've known about the health benefits of coffee for a while, at least in moderation, that it's not something, as long as you're not going crazy with all of the sugars and the creamers and consuming a lot of calories through it. As long if you're just drinking black coffee as God intended, uh, you know, maybe it's
That's
something
good.
that's actually good for your health.
Yeah, I mean, my line is I'm not old enough to drink coffee yet, and I still have not come to the age to drink coffee. But there is definitely there have been studies for years that have shown coffee is beneficial to individuals who drink it. And to your point, if you're drinking a little bit of coffee with a whole bunch of sugar, not so much, or a little bit of coffee with a whole bunch of milk and creamer, it doesn't seem to help so much. But if you do just drink black coffee and maybe you have a touch of creamer in there, you're going to get some benefit out of it. And the interesting thing is it the caffeine that's creating some of that, or what is it in coffee that we could single out to go, okay, is there something in coffee that maybe we could put in energy drinks and you get that same effect? So then your friends can say they're getting the same thing out of their energy drinks.
Absolutely. The problem I think is that most of the energy drinks out there, they've got synthetic caffeine, they've got all kinds of dyes and sugar and all kind of things that are going to make somebody crash and feel bad later on. They also tend to have like 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 times the amount of caffeine as in
Yes,
a single cup of coffee, and so it's a lot easier for somebody who drinks energy drinks to overdo it on the caffeine side of things as well.
for sure. I think everything should be done in moderation, especially when you're talking about energy drinks, because they can be a big, big issue. And if you have an unstable heart or whatever, and you consume too many energy drinks over a short period of time, it could be a devastating thing for sure.
While we're on the topic, I didn't plan on going this direction. Are there any healthy energy drink alternatives that you know of that are out there, Troy?
Well, there's one that I've heard about. Yeah, so we've got Just Energy, with four great flavors, and certainly a good energy drink to take because we put in all the bioavailable vitamins that are a part of it. And we did it with only natural flavoring and natural colors and other things like that. So we tried to avoid everything that could be bad and only put in those things that are good. And it's sweetened with stevia. So it's a great energy drink and um, certainly good for you. But it's one of those things that even with just energy, you've got to be careful because it does have caffeine in it. So you still have to be careful with your caffeine consumption with just energy, even.
Yeah. I think anytime that something becomes a dependency, it's probably not healthy for you. But if it's something that's used appropriately, to help you, be as productive as possible, to feel as good as possible, you're doing it in moderation, it's good for your health, and that's a good thing to go with.
Absolutely.
Well, that wraps us up for today, Troy. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I don't think so. I think a great health headline start for the month and look forward to getting into some other podcasts.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Frontline Health Podcast by Centurion. We encourage you to go out and take ownership of your health because you are your best health advocate. See you next time. If you enjoyed what you heard today on the podcast, please consider leaving us a review. We would love to hear your feedback and connect with you further. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube. And for safe, effective, and affordable health and wellness products made in the USA, visit www.centurion.health. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.